And then we have next up the panel on early experiences from the software providers. And I would like to invite Anu RK from Iris Carbon, Boris M from easyESEF, and Karsten Elmsted from easyx to join us for this panel. I would like to keep it as an open discussion. And if there is some questions you'd like to cover from the audience, please just post them to the chat and I'll do my best to cover them in the presentation. I would like to start the discussion with an overall view of experiences that you have gathered during this time that companies have started with ESEF filings, because I think you are working in close collaboration with the issuers. So have you experienced similar kind of issues that Daniel, for instance, was sharing with us just now? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Of course. Hello, everyone. This is Anu from Iris. Alina, I hope you're able to hear me.
Yes.
Okay. So indeed, this is like a very, very busy time for, of course, a lot of issuers and also for the software providers, as it's the peak of the annual filing season. So I think from our experience, I think what we have seen is that, of course, Daniel very, very well explained the challenges. So I think overall, from our perspective, what we've seen is most of our customers have actually chosen the outsourcing option, which means since this is like a year one for them, they did not want to take the chance of going through a lot which they're not aware of and keep it simple and straight and yet be compliant. So I think, if you're a company who's chosen outsourcing for the first year, so it's like a peace of mind that, at least you would kind of experience. However, we do have customers who've also gone ahead and taken the whole process internally, simply because they want to build in capabilities, right, within the organization. So of course, there's a lot of, effort on the training that goes through in acquainting them with XBRL. But one very important thing is that it's not just the XBRL, which is important. Very well, as mentioned by Daniel, the whole layout of the annual report, the a report looking exactly like how they would want to is a big question, right? It depends on what software you're using. So of course, sometimes there are questions around, okay, while the tag is okay, can I get this little bullet point here and that little bullet point there? So yes, of course, a huge attention has gone into the choice of XBRL tags, which is kind of very good, but also there's like a lot of emphasis that companies definitely require that their annual report to match with the PDF. And that is, I must tell you, a very much like an understated, activity, because I think everybody's focusing on getting their tags right. But I think overall, from our experience, I think, we didn't have like any kind of hardships, like how Daniel has explained. So the customers who filed with us seem to have like a overall decent experience and good experience. And of course, it didn't have a case where they had to file late. Thankfully, that has not happened with us. So I think if there are issuers in this event and who are yet to start with the ESEF reporting, and if next year is going to be the first year that you're going to comply with, I think my recommendation would be to actually do a dry run of the whole process, once your 2020 annual report publication is over, because that is very instrumental in making your entire process smooth. You know what is expected, what are the challenges that you could perhaps face, and therefore be prepared accordingly. Yeah.
Thank you, Anu. Would the others like to comment as well?
So hello. No, it's likely like Anu just said. It's really like this, that you need to make a trial run first with your last year annual report, so you can make a dry run, and so you win the time for the last time, so that you get not caught like Daniel said before. No, that it's really a time issue in the last moment if you find out these errors. I only can assure that, yes, the problems that we have seen and experienced was exactly the same that the previous speaker said, Daniel said, and Jack said this as well, and you as well. It's a kind of process problem that we are facing here. We have two ways of looking at the data that we have. One is the accountant data, and from the other side, we have the IT side, the XBRL side, and we need to bring them together. There's in the companies, you don't have these people who have both knowledge. So it's a problem, known problem everywhere, that we need somebody to translate, to help, to be the translator between both sides. Yes, these are the main points that we have seen really, that you have really the time issue at the backwards of the process, and really the translation process between the accountants and the IT experienced people.
And I also have a comment. And the comment is that we have seen from our customer side that we both have customers who do it themselves, and we have customers which we do the tagging for. And actually our experience is that no matter who is doing it, it's really important to be well prepared, because there are issues coming up which you didn't think of, and you need to be aware that there should be time to solve that. But having said that, it's also very important that you have the tool that can check what you've been doing and find the right way to tag to the right element, for instance. Also, some of our customers have been worried about if the layout was exactly the same as in the PDF. And well, it has been, because one of the challenges that you could see is that when you have different types of tools running your PDF, then you can have challenges with the inline XBRL file because they are very large. So you have to be aware that it's very large files. You have to have the right Explorer to look at that. And everything is solved when you are in good time. So we also recommended our customers to start with last year's annual report and to do all the tagging and controls with that.
Thank you for these comments. I think there was many good tips for future filers if they haven't started yet, but very good points. A lot of discussion has been around validation, and hearing from what Daniel said, that there seems to be many different kind of validations in place in different parts of the process. And I guess if these validations can give you a different result, it can be quite difficult for the filer. So what is your intake on this? And do you perhaps like validate the data yourself, and or should it be validated, and by whom?
Interesting question again. I think validations is like a very, very critical topic when it comes to this entire ESEF process. So I think from an issuer perspective, I can kind of imagine it could be very hard for an issuer to kind of understand, some of the technicalities. For example, like an ESEF reporting package should have this naming convention as an example, right? So here, overall, if you see, there are some issuers who have tried to take the pain to go ahead and understand, but still there are challenges. Very clearly, there are challenges. So I think here, maybe a good option is where the software vendors, especially since they have so much of experience with XBRL, could give a little helping hand, or help them with understanding what the validations are. So again, it all depends on what the company is actually choosing. If the company is going ahead and choosing like an in-house option where they're doing everything themselves, then typically it's expected they also clear all the validations. But since this is new, maybe I think it's useful that the software providers provide some assistance here. And of course, if the issuer is relying on the software provider to go ahead and do the entire XBRL creation, the software vendor would go ahead and anyways clear all the validations, is supposed to, by the way, clear all the validations, no matter whether it's an error or a warning. I think one additional step, right, even there are XBRL International Certified Validators, which is available for use. On top of that, when countries are having their own submission gateways, so there could be, for example, some regulators in some countries adding their own specific rules. For example, in Germany, there are very clear rules defined of what is allowed, what is not allowed, etc. So I think one suggestion or recommendation would be that issuers actually again do a test filing with the regulator ahead, maybe a few days ahead of the filing, if there's an option. So that will kind of definitely help in not getting like a heart attack or a pain attack during the last few days on the very last day of the filing. But definitely, I wouldn't kind of highly recommend that the validations is something the issuer should know in and out. I think definitely assistance from the software provider would be of great value to the issuers.
Thank you, Anu. What about Boris or Karsten? Do you want to comment?
I can comment on that. I think that I agree that validations can be difficult to solve for a normal user because, of course, they're helped by the software, but they have to understand the content of how the validations is done. So we have also experienced that those who are doing themselves, that we sometimes have to help them. And again, if you are in good time, that will help. But then there's also an issue about inconsistency about the rules. For instance, that some of the calculation rules, if you break down, for instance, total comprehensive income into different dimensions, then you will sometimes have calculation rules because it's not defined in all the dimensions, all the elements. And that create errors, and you can't really solve that. So it's actually also something which I think you have to look into how to make the rules clear.
Yes, I agree with you. You make to have the rules clear, but as well as I said before, you need somebody to mix the syntax with the content, no? And we have both sides here, and both sides are experts in one of these sides, and we need to bring them together. We need to take the hand from both sides and bring them together. This is the best way to get both sides on the syntax and content together so that the validation can run perfectly.
Indeed, it seems like the software providers are in the middle of it all, because you are the touching point to the filers and the one who is interpreting the regulation. Taken the comment that there is like misaligned guidances or misaligned rules. So do you recognize some points to improve, like or some kind of parts where some maybe your filing could produce some helping hand to bridge this gap? It sounds like there's like something not very clear if there is varying interpretations of rules, for instance.
Exactly. So I think one of the things actually that we are beginning to do is analyzing the easyESEF filings that's being published in various countries, right? So we picked up Finland as a first example, because I think a lot of companies in Finland do file early, and of course there are filings in Spain as well. So in terms of specifically, the validations, I think what we've seen so far is that the highest amount of, let's say, not in compliance with the validations is actually on the technical guidelines itself. So, it is not fully on the issuer, because I think the issuer may not know too much on what the technical guidelines are. So perhaps it's worth seeing what the software vendors are also doing, right? Not just the issuers. So out of the overall categories that we've seen so far, technical validations amounts to the highest, and followed by calculation inconsistencies, things like rounding off, etc. So interestingly, I think there are a few which the issuers may understand. For example, there are the rules which says you cannot have inconsistent duplicates, which means you can't have two different numbers for your 2020 revenue. It's as simple as that, which we definitely expect an issuer would kind of know. And even if the issuer has a mistake there, of course, the software vendor can kind of pitch in. But I think a bulk of the inconsistencies or inappropriateness in the filings that we are seeing is actually on the technical validation side. So perhaps I think it's a big question mark, Elena, to be very honest. I think there's a lot, perhaps even the software vendors have to revisit to see what is it that they're doing incorrectly, and therefore see how we can kind of jointly come up with something which is better. And of course, at this point in time, while it's kind of clear that not all OEMs are having validations at the time of receiving the data files, so I think that's a huge important point as well. So at the time of receiving, if the OEM had validations, probably the file would never pass. So that's an interesting point, perhaps for next year or for the year to come, after. But point of entry of receiving files is a crucial step for receiving all of these files. So if we have a check right there, then all of these technical specifications will not, there wouldn't be non-compliance with technical specifications. So you can imagine if, the technical specifications itself is not being kind of met, then how would be, the appropriateness of tagging or the choice of tags or the extensions or anchoring. So that goes somewhere way beyond what we can kind of imagine. So I think one suggestion perhaps could be, from an OEM perspective, I know that the role of the OEM is not to validate, but to receive the files. But otherwise what would happen is from the supervision authorities, what they would get is something that probably they may not be able to use to a great extent of what they would expect.
Good point.
I also have a comment in relation to that. And I would also say that there should be a collection of experiences from all the vendors that have done this translation to inline XBRL throughout the year, because I guess there are a lot of common pitfalls, common errors, something which is not very important, but could be changed by changing some of the rules, so that can be implemented in the new taxonomy and the new set of guidelines and rules. For instance, some of the experiences that we have seen is that in very many cases, there are rounding ups and rounding downs in the annual reports. And if the numbers are not the same, if you are in, for instance, the income statement and in the equity statement, there might be, then of course it has to be the same. But if it's just within the same, for instance, the income statement, there is one error up or down, then it might not be that important. So there could be a change in the rules, for instance. So I would suggest that you gather all the experiences that the vendors have experienced throughout this year.
Very good suggestion. And Boris, do you want to comment still?
Yes, I agree with Karsten that we need to have a pool of experiences that we have had so that we can improve. But I believe as well that the next speakers with empirical evidence that they will tell us something about this as well. We are on the first line, on the first row when we experience these issues.